This is Freshly Squeezed True Crime, a Florida-only true crime podcast. I'm Suhaili, and before we get to this week's juicy episode, I ask you to visit the website at fstcpodcast.com, where you'll find all of our social media platforms as well as the newest episodes. And also, find us on YouTube, where we'd like you to follow us, subscribe, share it, do all the things. So, pour yourself a tall glass of orange juice, and let me tell you a story. In celebration of our 10th episode, we present to you Florida's top 10 most dangerous cities to live in. Florida has long been known as a place for individuals to call home, as well as retirees, vacation homes, and others who come to enjoy the state's wide range of outdoor activities and amusement parks. With such a large influx, understanding the Florida crime rate by city can not only help decide which part of the Sunshine State to enjoy, but also how to keep you and your family safe in the third most populated state in the Union. On average annual basis, the state of Florida sees about 4,849 individuals die due to gun violence and 5,267 individuals wounded in an act of gun violence. Between the years of 2011 and 2020, Florida saw an increase of 15% in deaths related to gun violence when compared to the national rise of 33%. Homicides where a gun was involved increased by 40%. Guns are also the second leading cause of death for children and teens in the state of Florida. A violent crime is any crime that involves the intentional and knowing use of force or threat of force to harm another individual. These acts can include assault, murder, or robbery. Property crimes differ, as they often involve harm done to an individual's property without any actual physical harm done to the person. This can include theft, burglary, or vandalism. In the state of Florida, according to the organization Every Town for Gun Safety, in 2019 alone, there were 59 women shot by their intimate partner and killed. This number accounts for 67% of all female intimate partner homicides that occurred in the state, which is a similar number to the nationwide average of female intimate partner homicides. The most common type of crime in the state are as follows: drug offenses, assault, theft, DUIs, and burglaries. Florida, as I mentioned before, is the third most populated state in the Union and is ranked 26th in the Union of the lowest violent crime rate. Florida's tourism plays a large role in the places where crime occurs. From beachgoers to theme park attendees, tourists who do not take the proper safety measures could be a likely target for would-be criminals. Locking up personal belongings, sticking to well-lit areas, and not walking alone at night can help keep you and others safe. In honor of our 10th episode, we present to you the top 10 most dangerous cities in Florida. The following are ranked by combining violent and property crime statistics from official sources. And if you need official sources, please see our website. Number 10, Panama City. Located in Bay County, Panama City has a higher overall crime rate compared to the national average, with violent crime and property crime rated along exceeding national averages. Spring break fuels this panhandle city by 6.05 violent crimes and 38% property crimes out of 1,000. The Cove neighborhood sees post-hurricane squatter crimes. Beach rental scams peak from June to August on the Front Beach Road. 40 years ago, David Monroe Goodwin and 5 others, including his brother, met in Tallahassee to hatch a plan to bring 20 tons of marijuana into Panama City. The scheme was part of an FBI sting to catch a reputed big-time drug smuggler. On January 23, 1977, things went awry. While the smugglers brought the Colombian pot ashore, 4 unsuspecting people stumbled on the clandestine operation at Sandy Creek in Bay County and would be shot dead by Walter Steinhorst and his accomplice Charles Hughes. Goodwin, then 31, along with 3 others, were charged with first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death. In 1981, his death sentence was vacated, and he has spent the past 36 years knowing he could die in prison. On May 2, 2025, at age 70, Goodwin walked out of the Everglades Correctional Institute in Miami as a free man after the Florida Commission on Offender Review granted his parole. Goodwin was on the beach unloading marijuana when 39-year-old Harold Sims, one of 4, who happened on the smuggling operation, was shot and killed. Steinhorst, the purported ringleader of the murders, tied up Douglas Hood, 21, and sisters Sandy, 14, and Sheila McAdams, 16, in Goodwin's van and drove them to St. Cole outside of Perry, where they were executed. Goodwin, a Florida State University cum laude graduate, was sentenced for his role in the murders, although he was nowhere in the vicinity of where they occurred. He said he and others were scared of Steinhorst and shocked at the murders. His only role, he said at trial, was bringing Steinhorst a rope used to bind the victims, which he did under threat of violence. Several people involved and charged in the scheme testified that Steinhorst was uncontrollable that night on the beach. Since then, the story of the Sandy Creek murders has enthralled a cadre of law enforcement agencies who have worked to pick up each of the dozen or so people involved. It has spawned books and drawn the attention of national media. Number 9. Jacksonville. Located in Duval County, Jacksonville is the largest city by land area in the contiguous United States and the most populous in Florida. It is a 6.31 violent crimes percentage and a 39.05 property crimes per 1,000. Worse is the north side's 103rd Street corner. The Riverside Arts Market avoids this with volunteer patrols. Shipyard layoffs increased pawn shop robberies by 27%. Jacksonville and Duval County will have its own episode for sure in the future. Number 8. Daytona Beach. Located in Volusia County, Daytona Beach is a popular tourist destination known for its beaches and motorsports with a high crime index. The contributing factors include tourism, drug-related crime, and property crime. The spring break destination has a 6.53 violent crimes and a 40.12 property crimes per 1,000, mostly along Ridgewood Avenue bars. Bike Week annually brings 200 plus extra DUIs annually. In the mid-1980s, Lisa Pazalakis was a wealthy young professional living and working in Daytona Beach, Florida. Under the direction of her successful father, Lisa has secured her own financial future with a thriving amusement company on the popular Daytona Beach boardwalk, which drew millions of tourists year after year. Lisa wanted more, though. She wanted the love of a husband and a home filled with children. She had dated several men, but none of them really caught her fancy until she met Constantine Costa Fotopoulos. Costa, like Lisa, was Greek. Unlike Lisa, who was born in America, Costa had left his parents behind in Greece to study in the United States in hope of someday living a life of wealth and success. Well, unfortunately, Costa didn't have much ambition in life and relied on the tried and true formula for a lazy man's secret of success. Marry a rich woman. When he met Lisa, Costa believed he'd won the lottery. After a whirlwind courtship, he proposed marriage, and Lisa, in love with a handsome fellow Greek, eagerly accepted. Lisa believed she had fulfilled her dream. Costa knew he had fulfilled one of his, too. Mr. Duplicity. Soon after Lisa and Costa were married, he began insisting he wanted to try owning and operating a business. Costa planned to start a combination pool hall and deli at the other end of the boardwalk. Lisa wasn't keen on his business idea, believing it would draw the area's local undesirables instead of the free-spending tourists that merchants preferred. But she wanted to support her husband and readily provided him with the startup funding he needed. Just as Lisa had feared, the pool hall quickly became a loitering place for juvenile delinquents and other petty criminals. Tourists kept their distance from Costa's boardwalk business. Despite the complaints of his wife and other boardwalk business owners, Costa was enjoying the company he kept at his place. He saw the potential of their kinds and began to cash in on it, literally. Costa had made connections back in Greece with a group who printed counterfeit American dollars in different denominations and would sell them to him for mere pennies on the dollar. All Costa had to do was integrate them with real money to make an outstanding profit. And what better place to do it than in one of America's busiest vacation destinations? Counterfeit money and scam. Kevin Ramsey had worked for Costa a few hours per week, but he had been fired after Costa caught him taking money from the register. Before, during, and after that time, Ramsey had slunk around the boardwalk day and night, pickpocketing and shoplifting, trying to eke out an existence. Costa believed he'd been the perfect guy to help infiltrate the local currency with the fake cash. Costa provided Ramsey with a counterfeit $100 bill. Ramsey, in turn, would visit a local store, purchase a pack of cigarettes, for example, and pay with a phony currency, Ramsey would return half of the change received to Costa and keep the other half, along with the cigarettes. For Ramsey, it was a sweet deal, and when Costa asked if he had other friends willing to help spread around the funny money, Ramsey had no trouble recruiting local hustlers. So many youngsters, the kind who would rather scam than, work, came in droves to the pool hall that Costa had plenty of passers to choose from. One of them was a barely legal age runaway from Massachusetts. Her name was Deirdre Michelle Hunt. Costa was about to get more than he bargained for. Our deadly Deirdre. Deirdre Michelle Hunt had a mother only in the sense that a woman gave birth to her, but she was never maternally nurtured. Deirdre's mother was usually too busy getting drunk or high while running through a string of boyfriends. Deirdre became a local troublemaker in Manchester, New Hampshire. In one incident, she was able to beat the charges after shooting a woman, but things got too hot for her, and she decided to move to Florida. Besides, maybe get a fresh start. Of course, what Deirdre meant by a fresh start was finding, new victims to scam, which was easier than, once again, working. Costa seemed to be just what she needed. Costa was smitten at first sight. Not only was she the teenage brown-eyed beauty going to be great for counterfeiting operation, but she'd make for a fantastic mistress too. The new employee. To ward off any suspicions Lisa may have had about Deirdre's constant presence at the pool hall, Costa hired her on as a bartender. However, it's likely the teen spent more time on her knees in Costa's office than she did on her feet taking drink orders. Nonetheless, Lisa, who frequently visited her husband's business, was wary of the girl and questioned Costa about his relationship with Deirdre. Costa, of course, denied any relationship other than employee and employer. When Lisa's father died unexpectedly, Deirdre Hunt was the last person on her mind as the family dealt with the grief and went about the task of settling her father's estate. It was a difficult time, and Costa was more absent than ever, claiming his business was tying up all this time. Lisa inherited a hefty sum from her father, and Lisa and Costa decided to build their dream home with the windfall. When the home they had been living in sold faster than anticipated, they moved in with Lisa's mother and brother until their dream house could be completed. Deirdre was very aware of the money Lisa had from her own success as well as what she had inherited from her father. She frequently ranted at Costa that she wanted to live like Lisa, in a large home with fancy clothing, expensive foreign cars, jewels, and money to spend frivolously. Yes, she did. Costa gave her more than she'd ever had in her lifetime, but it wasn't enough. She wanted it all. Costa was in financial trouble. The money laundering scheme had fizzled out when U.S. Treasury officials began asking questions. He was once again relying on Lisa for spending money, so Costa came up with the only plan he believed would allow him to walk away with legitimate wealth: murder. Deirdre, of course, thought it was a brilliant idea. Blackmail and murder. As Deirdre and Costa were planning how best to eliminate Lisa, an immediate problem came to their attention. Kevin Ramsey began demanding money from Costa to stay quiet about his counterfeiting and adulterous activities. If Costa didn't do as Ramsey asked, he planned to have a chat with both Lisa and the police. Such things seldom end well, and this was no exception. On October 20th, 1989, Deirdre and Costa convinced Ramsey to go for a ride with them. They took him to an isolated shooting range and told him it was a surprise initiation into their, quote, club. Under this guise, Ramsey willingly allowed himself to be tied to a tree. With Costa videotaping the event, Deirdre told Ramsey he was only going to be shot, but not actually hit. In actuality, Deirdre shot him 3 times in the chest and once in the head. Switching places with Costa, Deirdre captured Costa on tape as he shot Ramsey in the head with an assault rifle. The tape being the, quote, trust needed to seal their relationship, the couple had sex soon after the murder. Then they promptly carried on with their plans for murdering Lisa. The odd couple didn't think it would be too difficult to execute their plan. After all, they were experienced killers now. Robbery gone wrong. Costa and Deirdre came to the realization that there might be plenty of people who would talk after Lisa's murder. Police would learn about their affair, and the two of them would become prime suspects. So, they decided it was best to hire someone to do the job for them. Deirdre went to her friend Laurie Henderson and asked if she knew anyone who would be interested in the job. Laurie responded her friend Tega James would probably be willing to do it. Do you have any friends who would do this? Because clearly she did. James was indeed interested, and plans were made for him to carry out the murder at an up-and-coming Halloween social Lisa and Costa were scheduled to attend. However, James backed out after arriving because he said too many people were around. James was given another time and place, but failed to follow through that time too. Deirdre then approached a young Ohio man who was new to Daytona Beach scene. Brian Chase was very taken with Deirdre and would stumble over himself in an effort to impress her. When Deirdre asked Chase if he would be willing to kill someone for $5,000, he agreed he would. The truth is that Chase was terrified and didn't really want to do it. Several times he thought of ways to get out of committing the murder, but he was so desperately wanted Deirdre to like him, he went through with things as planned. On November 4th, 1989, Chase slipped through a window left unlocked by Costa and undetected by the security system at their home. He silently made his way to the bedroom where the couple lay sleeping. Creeping to Lisa's side of the bed, Chase fired a single shot to her head. Chase had no idea he was just another disposable tool in Costa and Deirdre's fatal fantasy. At the sound of Chase firing a shot at Lisa, Costa, who had only been feigning asleep in anticipation of Chase's survival, jumped from the bed and fired repeatedly at Chase with an AK-47. Chase died on the bedroom floor. The shot to Lisa's head had rendered her unconscious, but had not proven fatal, and she was rushed to the nearest hospital. Costa stayed behind to tell his story to investigators of killing the man who had shot his wife in an obvious burglary gone wrong. Costa was certain he would soon be declared a hero. He couldn't have been more wrong. Criminal blunders. One of the first things that tipped off detectives about the alleged, quote, burglary scene was the fact that the intruder had bypassed Costa, went around the couple's bed, and straight over to Lisa. When a search of the crime scene uncovered a videotape of Ramsey's murder, Costa and Deirdre may have signed their own indictments. This was quickly followed by news that Lisa had survived the attempted murder. She would later testify against Costa at his trial. So, where are they now? Not surprisingly, a jury unanimously agreed that 20-year-old Deirdre was guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Deirdre, now in her mid-50s, is incarcerated at Lowell Annex Correctional Institute in Ocala, Florida. Costa was convicted of attempted murder and conspiracy and sentenced to death. He was scheduled to be executed in 2008, but it was stayed pending on one of his numerous appeals. Said appeal was denied in October 2008. Costa would again appeal, and he would again be denied in 2018. Costa is in his mid-60s and is currently sitting on death row at Union Correctional Institute in Radford, Florida. The last laugh. Lisa Pasakoulis got the last laugh. The man who married her for money and tried to murder her for the same sits locked behind the bars of a filthy prison, having his every move dictated from the time he wakes up, to his weekly showers, to the meals he must eat, to the clothing he must wear. And his envious little mistress, who wanted to steal Lisa's life, had already lived longer behind bars than she did as a free woman. Lisa, on the other hand, is alive and well. Her days as the proprietor of the Joyland Amusement Center and Lisa's gift shop came to an end when her family's building on the boardwalk was torn down after a 20-year battle against an eminent domain action by developers. But Lisa never gave up on love. Following her former husband's trial, Lisa found love and remarried. Today she is known as Lisa Pastranos. Number 7. Orlando. A metropolitan city in central Florida with a high crime rate index. The contributing factors include a large population, tourism, and poverty homelessness. The tourist hub sees a crime divide between theme park safety and Pine Hills danger zones. International Drive Hotel averages 3 times more thefts than Disney properties. So, stay tuned for future cases from Orlando and Disney's dark side. Number 6. Miami. The contributing factors include tourism, high cost of living, the lack of affordable housing. Florida's most populated city reports a 6.89 of violent crimes and a 42.45 property crimes per 1,000 people, concentrated in Liberty City and Little Haiti. The Wynwood Arts District has seen a 40% reduction in thefts with the implementation of private security. Miami has already had a few episodes on this podcast, but of course, be ready for more in the future. Number 5. Cocoa. Cocoa is a city located on Florida's Space Coast, which has a higher than average crime rate, mainly due to drug trafficking, property crime, and a lack of affordable housing. The Space Coast tourism hides Cocoa Beach's 7.12 violent crimes and 3.89 property crimes per 1,000. The 524 corridor sees weekday armed robberies targeting shipyard workers. On Wednesday, November 29, 2022, at 11 p.m., Cocoa Police Department received a call in reference to a reckless gray Jeep in the area of Sunrise Village. I wonder if he had those duckies attached to it. A witness advised that the vehicle was occupied by 3 black males and were identified as Quan and Mike and were possibly armed with a firearm. The officer activated their lights to stop the vehicle, and the car fled at a high rate of speed. The car was registered to Bruce Gray at 1202 Japotnica Drive. However, no contact was made with persons at that address. However, at 2:29 a.m., CPD received a call from Quan's mother, who stated that Quan's friend Toby killed his mother, Carol Gray. At 2:30 a.m., the victim was discovered lying supine at the doorway of the laundry room that led to the backyard. The victim was covered in blood and had multiple stab wounds on her body, and her nose was almost detached. She also had blunt force trauma to the face as well as to the back of the head. Near the victim was a small black folding knife as well as a frying pan with a broken handle coated in blood. The victim took a breath and stated that Toby did this. The victim was airlifted to Holmes' Regional Medical Center for treatment, where she was listed in critical stable condition. The suspect, Tobias Brewer, was apprehended traveling northbound on I-95 in Volusia County after a multi-county pursuit that ended with Brewer crashing the vehicle and him fleeing into the woods. Post-mortem, the subject admitted to stabbing the victim multiple times with a pocket knife that he carries around. He advised that he had struck the victim in the head until the handle of the frying pan broke, at which point he pulled out his pocket knife and began stabbing her repeatedly. The suspect advised that he was upset because his mother was constantly on his case about cleaning his room. He explained that he does not like cleaning his room and was tired of the victim constantly harping about it. The suspect stated that after the attack, he went into the victim's room and took both of her vehicle keys and money out of her purse. When asked if Quan knew about the attack on his mother, he stated that he did and admitted to asking Quan for a firearm so he could shoot the victim. Quan advised that he was not going to bring a firearm but would bring a knife. Tobias Jacob Brewster did commit first-degree premeditated murder with a knife, grand theft auto, and fleeing to elude. He has a mental health status check on December 4th, 2025. Number 4. Lake Park. Located in Palm Beach County, it has a high crime rate, with property crime being a major concern. Factors contributing to this is the proximity to West Palm Beach, high cost of living, a lack of affordable housing. Recording at a 7.45 of violent crimes and 45.67 property crimes per 1,000, this Palm Beach County town struggles with gang activity near the FEC railway. The Shell gas station on Park Avenue is a known hotspot. A resident of Palm Beach County, Florida, Kathy Lamb was only 30 years old at the time of her murder. People who knew her described as a cheerful and kind-hearted individual who loved making new friends and was always full of life. People will be interested to know that apart from being known for her helpful nature, Kathy was a massive animal lover and took care of 2 dogs all on her own. She worked as a district scheduler at Walgreens, and although Kathy and her husband were seemingly estranged, she had hopes of getting back together. Yet there was nothing out of the ordinary that could have hinted at the oncoming tragedy. The police arrived at Kathy's Lake Park residence on June 15, 2004, only to find the 30-year-old lying in a pool of her own blood on the floor. While it was apparent that the victim was dead, and the brutality of the crime shocked even the toughest of police officers, as they found blood and brain matter splattered all over the walls. On top of it, both of Kathy's dogs were severely injured, but the police found no evidence of forced entry anywhere. Hence, while an autopsy determined that Kathy Lamb was beaten to death by her attacker, officers believed she was well acquainted with her murderer. Interestingly, Kathy's seemingly estranged husband, Jeff Lamb, was the one who called 911 after finding his wife's body. Jeff later mentioned that he was working at a towing job until 5 p.m. and then spent an hour and a half helping a friend move houses. He also insisted that Kathy had been unreachable over the phone throughout the day and insisted he came back home around 7 p.m. to find her dead. Subsequently, Jeff's friends seconded his alibi, and with no further information, the investigation came to a sudden halt. Incidentally, a few days after Kathy's murder, the story took a sudden turn when a woman named Joey approached the police and introduced herself as Jeff's fiancée. Joey mentioned that she and Jeff were already planning on tying the knot and had even purchased a house together. Jeff immediately refuted the claims and stated that although he and Joey were pretty close, he cut off all connection with her after deciding to get back with his wife Kathy. As a matter of fact, Jeff seemed pretty confident about ending things with Joey, and since the police did not have much information, they could not accuse him of lying. Unfortunately, the investigation saw very little progress in the days that followed, as the police exhausted the leads they already had and carried out a thorough search of the crime scene. Officers even went from door to door looking for witnesses, but to no avail. People who lived near Kathy's house claimed they saw nothing suspicious on the night of the murder, and the police were inclined to believe them, since there was no sign of forced entry. That was when investigators turned their attention towards Kathy's dogs and wondered why they did not try to protect their owner. When veterinary surgeons treated the dogs, they realized that someone had repeatedly hit them on the head with the blunt objects, which led to the injuries. Moreover, as Jeff's dogs was in the same house at the time of the murder, Kathy's dogs attacked him instead of defending their owner. Animal behavior experts immediately circled in on this incident and theorized that the dogs would turn on each other only if they were well acquainted with the person who attacked them. This person happened to be none other than Kathy's estranged husband, and soon forensic tests discovered a blood splatter on the pair of jeans Jeff wore on June 15th. Furthermore, the police learned that since Jeff was previously convicted of stealing from his employer, the court asked him to pay the $20,000 as restitution fees. Conveniently, he would have been able to claim a $29,000 from Kathy's life insurance, which gave him a valid motive for murder. With enough evidence for an arrest, officers soon apprehended Jeff and charged him with the murder. When produced in court, Jeff pled not guilty and insisted on his innocence. However, the evidence proved otherwise, and the jury convicted him of premeditated murder in the first degree. As a result, a judge sentenced Joe to life in prison without parole in 2006, and he currently remains behind bars at the South Bay Correctional Facility in South Bay, Florida. At number 3, we have Lake City. Located in Columbia County, Lake City has a high crime index. The contributing factors include drug-related crime, property crime, and a lack of economic opportunities. The I-75 corridor city sees 7.89 violent crimes and 48.56 property crimes per 1,000, driven mostly by drug trafficking. Motels along the US 90 host frequent meth-related arrests. So if you're looking for a meth party, that's where you go. The murder of Kimberly Leach, age 12, was Ted Bundy's last victim. The case will not be covered today, as I want to dedicate an entire episode to Ted Bundy. Number 2, Opelika. Located in Miami-Dade County, known for its high crime rate, the key factors contributing to this include high poverty and unemployment, gang violence, and lack of community investment. Opelika's 8.76 violent crimes and 51.23 property crimes per 1,000 residents stems from its abandoned buildings and transient aviation workers. The Opelika Triangle, northwest of 22nd Avenue, accounts for 80% of shootings, so stay out of there. Miami, Florida. According to evidence presented at trial on December the 5th, 2020, 59-year-old James Edward Daniels, 69-year-old Frederick Eugene Rudolph were sentenced to life on March 25th, 2025, after being convicted of kidnapping, torturing, and murdering people in an Opelika truck yard. A third conspirator, 56-year-old Herbert Barr, was also sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison for his involvement. They bound and tortured the 3 victims, duct taped their eyes, and threw them in the back of a rented U-Haul van after stealing the victims' drugs. They drove around the city for hours before taking the victims to an abandoned house in Opelika and attempting to execute them by shooting the 3 victims. Osmar Olivia, 50, and Jonah Gonzalez Quesada, 26, were found dead, shot after being tied up and tortured, while a 3rd victim miraculously survived being shot in the head. He was airlifted to the hospital and made a full recovery. Daniels reportedly stole jewelry from one of the murdered victims, and all defendants received drug money or both in exchange for their participation in the premeditated murder. Records show Daniels and Rudolph were also indicted on unrelated drug distribution charges in July of 2022. In that case, a judge sentenced Rudolph to 11 years in prison and Daniels to 35 months in prison, or just under 3 years. The men were indicted for kidnapping case in November 2023. Neither is a stranger to the criminal justice system, with Daniels' Florida's Department of Corrections incarceration history dating back 40 years. Rudolph was on probation for a drug-related charge at the time of the murders, records show. The story does not end there. After a manhunt spanning several days, James Edward Daniels, who was erroneously released from a Miami-Dade jail, was apprehended at a residence in Macon, Georgia, with Tamisha Price. Price is a Reynolds Key Council member representing Post 5 and took office in January 2022. Price is expected to face felony charges for allegedly hindering Daniels' apprehension, and the Miami-Dade Corrections Department has attributed the accidental release to a procedural error. He was in federal custody until September 24th, when he was transferred to the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center in Miami-Dade to close out a 2021 state drug case that had been put on the back burner. The U.S. Marshals Service, the agency responsible for transporting Daniels between facilities, had placed a federal detainer on him. That designation flags jails and court personnel, notifying them that he must remain in Miami-Dade jail and not to be released, the agency said. On September the 25th, Circuit Court Judge Christine Hernandez convicted Daniels on drug charges and credited him with time served, foregoing any prison time due to his already serving a life sentence. A fiasco ensued when court and jail records showed Daniels was released on September the 27th because of Hernandez's sentencing despite the federal detainer, which should have returned him to the custody of the Marshal Service. It is not yet clear who is responsible for missing/ignoring or putting aside the federal detainer. And at number 1, we have Florida City. Located in Miami-Dade, known for its high crime index, with poverty crime being the most prevalent type, the city's challenges include proximity to Miami, lack of economic opportunities, and drug-related crime. With a violent crime rate of 17.56 per 1,000 residents and property crimes at 56.78 per 1,000, Gateway to the Keys leads Florida in criminal activity. Drug-related robberies cluster near US 1 truck stops, where police report 3 times more incidents than the state average. Only 23% of students were proficient in math, with 34% meeting reading standards. Florida City has a dubious honor of being ranked as the worst place to live in Florida. Nestled alongside Homestead, it has a population of just over 12,700. The aftermath of Hurricane Andrew still looms over the city, having been devastated back in 1992, and recovery has been sluggish. Residents have reported a pervasive sense of insecurity, making Florida City a place best avoided for those looking for a safe environment. So why is violent crime so much higher here? One of the biggest reasons is poverty. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, 31% of Florida City's population lives below the poverty line. Put into perspective, that's 3,970 out of 12,790 people. While poverty doesn't inherently cause crime, the two are connected. When people lack access to stable jobs, education, healthcare, and housing, it can increase stress and depression, which may push them to turn to criminal behavior as a way to survive or gain control over the situation. Lack of community resources on a local level can also inhibit preventative security measures, making it harder to respond to violence. A 15-year-old boy is facing adult charges in connection with a deadly shooting in Florida City that left one teenager dead and another critically wounded. According to an arrest report from Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office, the shooting unfolded around 6:10 p.m. on April the 18th near Southwest 6th Avenue and 7th Terrace, just north of the Pineland Preserve. Florida City police officers arrived to find 2 teens inside a 2009 Buick Enclave. They said one of the victims, seated in the front passenger seat, had been shot multiple times and was pronounced dead at the scene by Miami-Dade's fire rescue personnel. He or she was not identified on the report. Authorities said the driver of the SUV had a gunshot wound to the back and was airlifted to Jackson South Medical Center in critical condition. Surveillance footage reviewed by the investigators showed multiple shooters opening fire on the SUV before fleeing southbound on foot. According to the report, the surviving victim, later identified as Tobias Childress, as one of the shooters. Investigators said that the shooting may have stemmed from a marijuana exchange planned just ahead of April 20th. The victim told detectives that someone he knew, who was among the shooters, had invited him to the location by text, the report stated. With assistance from MPPD's Special Response Team, detectives said that they arrested Childers on April 23rd at his residence. Authorities recovered a firearm with a 24-round capacity magazine along with 21 live rounds of ammunition. The firearm matched one displayed by Childers in social media videos from April 20th and the 21st, just days after the double shooting. He is a documented gang member, and in January of 2024, when he was 14, he was adjudicated delinquent related to a Miami-Dade case of grand theft of a motor vehicle and burglary. He was taken to Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office headquarters where he was questioned. However, the contents of his statement were redacted in the release report. Jail records show Childress was being held without bond at the Metro West Detention Center. On May 15, Childress was charged as an adult, and he was moved to the adult jail. He was assigned a public defender and was being held without bond. The Florida City neighborhood has also seen a spike in gun violence this year. Honorable mentions for worst cities also go out to Riviera Beach, Gainesville, Fort Lauderdale, Belle Glade, Tampa, St. Pete, and Tallahassee. So be mindful when you're traveling the Sunshine State. This episode was squeezed to perfection. First We Squeeze is hosted and written by me, Sue Haley, and executive produced by Ebony. Still thirsty and need more? Visit us at fstcpodcast.com for links to all our social media handles, including YouTube. Want to keep the juice flowing? Make a donation by buying us a glass. And as always, cheers.